Hola y bienvenido una vez más a un entrenamiento de Wheatstone. Esta es la segunda parte de 3 secciones de entrenamiento que estamos haciendo. La del día de hoy estamos hablando de la configuración de las consolas de la serie L y de las consolas IP, IP12, IP16 y de las L8, L12 y L16. Así que los dejo con este entrenamiento. Dura 1 hora 40 minutos. Así que espero que lo disfrute y sea provechoso para su cadena.
So over the next, like say 20 minutes or so, what we're going to talk about is the L12. I'm going to explain the L12 to you. Then we're going to talk about the IP12 generalities, about the engine, and then I'm going to show you the main differences between the two boards.
Ok, entonces durante los próximos 20-30 minutos vamos a hablar primero de la L8, la L12, la serie L, y después vamos a hablar de las IP12, IP16. Y después vamos a hablar las diferencias principales de cada una de estos mixers.
Okay, so both of the consoles are made here at Wheatstone, and they share many of the similar components.
Ambas consolas están hechas aquí en Wheatstone y comparten los mismos componentes.
Originally, the IP12 was an Audio Arts console, so we had the IP12 under Audio Arts, and then we had the L12 or an L8 series under Wheatstone.
Originalmente el modelo IP12 se vendía bajo la marca Audio Arts y la L bajo la marca Wheatstone. Hoy en día se hace ambas con la marca Wheatstone.
So naturally, when the board was branded Wheatstone, we used our Wheatstone on-off switch. So you'll see the big rugged on-off switch like we use in the LX series and the E6 series.
Entonces, cuando estaba marcado con la marca Wheatstone, usábamos los switches de on-off grandes que ven en pantalla, como en las consolas LX, en las series LX, en las series más grandes.
The finish of the L12 is a little bit different than the IP12, is that we actually powder coat all the modules and then we laser etch all the nomenclature and fader scales.
El terminado, el acabado de la L se parece más a las consolas grandes de ellos. Se le hace una pintura, una especie de capas de pintura de muy alta calidad a diferentes temperaturas para que no pueda ser borrado la medición que existen en los faders.
Yeah, the L12 also has a few more features like events. The IP12 has 4 events, and the L12 has up to 8 events that you can actually name in the OLED on the module.
Una de las grandes diferencias entre una y la otra es que la serie IP12 tiene 4 eventos y la serie L tiene 10 eventos. L series has 10 events, correct?
Yes, which you can name and give them an actual name. In the IP12, it's just 4 buttons.
En la serie L, usted les puede poner un nombre a cada uno de los eventos, bien sea tipos de programas. En cambio, en los 4 eventos de la serie IP, son 4 botones, 1, 2, 3 y 4.
The monitor controls on the L series are a better switch. So you see the round knobs for control room, or I mean, a better part. The headphone control and the control room module, those are a little bit better control. So it adds to the cost of the IP of the L series.
Los módulos, los controles, los knobs de controles del control room en la serie L son un poco mejor, son de mejor calidad. Por eso es que la consola tiene un valor un poco más elevado que la serie IP.
Yep. And for those customers in South America that are using maybe a big talk show and they may want mode selection, what mode selection is the ability to take one of those inputs and put it in mono, left, right, or stereo. The L12 has mode selection.
La serie L12 o L8 tiene una función que se llama mode selection. Can you say again, Jay, what is the benefit of the mode selection?
Traditionally in the past, sometimes when the reporters were bringing in, outside material, sometimes there wouldn't be a left channel or a right channel, or they'd want to sum the module. So we have mode selection on the L12 to either select left, right, stereo or mono. The
Okay. Ese Mode Selection es una aplicación para, por si acaso viene un reportero y está trayendo algún canal izquierdo o un canal derecho, uno puede seleccionar que sea el izquierdo, derecho o sumarlos para que sea estéreo.
So in the last year, we've made some significant improvements to the L series console.
En el último año se le han hecho varias mejoras a la serie L.
Yep. So we've added an L16 to the product line. So we've got an L8, an L12, and an L16.
Se agregó un mainframe llamado el L16. Anteriormente solo estaba el L8 y el L12. Ahora está el L16.
We also have an EQ option with an EQ module. So there's dynamics and EQ can be added to any of the L series.
For all the input lines or just for that module?
Nope, we have I'll show you in a minute, but you can have full EQ and dynamics for every single.
Okay. La serie L se le agregó un módulo de ecualización y dynamics que ahorita nos los va a mostrar, que se puede beneficiar cada uno de los inputs de la consola con él.
Okay, and I'm showing you an older picture right now, but another big improvement to all the L series is the L8, the L12, and L16 now have a built-in Q speaker and Q amp.
Esta foto no es la más actual, pero en los modelos de hoy en día, las consolas tienen incluido un monitor de speaker, de Q.
Yeah, and another advantage, and I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison, another advantage of the L series is put the OLED in there. So the OLED is on the module, not in the meter bridge, and we can give you additional information with that OLED display.
Y por supuesto, una de las mayores ventajas que tiene la serie L sobre la serie IP es ese display OLED que tiene cada uno de los módulos, que no está en el meter bridge, sino que está en cada uno de los módulos y tiene esta información adicional que ahora la vamos a ver en detalle.
Yep. Another difference too is in the L12 and the L8, or I'm sorry, the L12 and the L16, Alfonso, they actually have a Wheatstone rack mount power supply.
La otra diferencia en los modelos L12 y L16 es que la fuente de poder está en un rack mount. Is that power supply included in the CV?
Nope, it was the L8. The L8 is still powered off the CV blade.
Okay.
But the L12 and the L16 have a rack mount power supply like the Lightning or the R60 or any of our older analog boards.
Entonces, en el modelo L8, la fuente de poder está en el Blade CB y en los modelos L12 y L16, además del Blade CB, existe rack mount, la fuente de poder separada.
Yep. So when a customer calls me in the US or anywhere in the world and they say, Jay, what is the difference between an L12 and an IP12? My first response, because they are so close, is looks. And the Wheatstone looks much better.
Realmente la mayor diferencia que hay entre la IP12 y la L, la serie L, es lo vistosa que se ve la consola. La consola L, al ser bautizada Wheatstone desde el principio, tiene una mejor pinta, mejor acabado que la IP12.
You know, and I'm going to show you some of the shared things, but they're very, very similar. The meter bridge looks better on the L8. We use a nice padded wrist rest on the L8 and the L series, and the on-off button is a little bit bigger and a little bit beefier, but they're very similar.
Pero son muy similares entre sí, es una cosa bastante de apariencia. Los botones son mejor calidad, el display, etcétera, como ya lo habíamos nombrado anteriormente.
And they both use the exact same console blade.
Y ambas usan exactamente el mismo console blade.
For those of you who want to add EQ and dynamics, that would be a special console blade, but we don't sell a lot of EQ and dynamics in South America.
But for the EQ and dynamics on the L series, you mean, adding this module?
Yep, if you order it with EQ, we'll actually send you an engine that's got a few extra chips inside.
Ah, ok. Cuando se ordena la consola para que tenga EQ y Dynamics, el Blade tiene algunas diferencias, así que sale de fábrica como un Blade configurado para ello.
Okay, so now when we look at the IP12, you're going to see the same number of buttons. You're going to see the same number of 4 outputs, talkback and cue in each channel.
Entonces, cuando vemos la IP12, vemos los mismos números de botones, vemos los mismos talkback y cue en cada input y los mismos 4 canales de programa, salida, auxiliar, etc.
We use a smaller on-off switch.
Usamos unos switches más pequeños o no.
The modules are painted with the nomenclature screened over the top like a traditional audio arts.
La forma de pintar los módulos se hace como con la tecnología que lo hace Audio Arts, que es con menos rigurosidad como lo han hecho con la Wheatstone.
With every Wheatstone console, IP console now in the world, whether it's DMX, IP12, L12, or any of them larger, every single channel has a mix minus.
Cada uno de los canales en cualquiera de las 3 series, DMX, IP o L, es... sorry, Jay, I was reading something and I lost it. Each module has mix minus. That's what you said, right?
Every module has a mix minus with an individual talkback to that.
Y cada módulo, disculpen que me distraje, cada módulo tiene mix minus con un talkback individual.
Yeah, and really the main and a feature that I prefer on the IP12 than the L12 is the AB switches at the top of the module.
Y algo muy ventajoso y muy visual es que el switch AB está en la parte superior del módulo. Eso es algo que le gusta mucho a los clientes.
Yep. So on the L12 you have an AB switch, which is a toggle with a soft key on top. The IP12 gives an operator an individual AB switch so the talent can...
Can you go back to the L12 so I can see it?
Can I go? Yep. And I'm going to zoom in a little while.
Sure.
This how it has a soft key. We have a single button up top for AB, and then the one on the right is a soft. But on the IP12, how does it go?
Yeah. Entonces pueden ver que en la serie L tiene un botón AB y después uno para seleccionar. La IP12 es A, B independiente, más directo. Ahorita vamos a hablar específicamente de las funciones, cómo programarlos, etc.
Yep. The IP12, again, it uses the same console blade everybody's familiar with.
Y todas tienen el mismo blade que ya todos ustedes deben estar familiarizados con él. Vamos a ir en detalle igual forma.
Okay, so here's a side-by-side of the L series on the right, its input module. And on the left, we have the IP12 module.
Entonces aquí tenemos uno al lado de lo otro. Al lado derecho vemos la serie L y al lado izquierdo vemos la serie IP en sus diferentes módulos. Y podemos apreciar mejor la diferencia en detalle.
Like I will keep saying this. Yes, they're very, very similar, except the Wheatstone console, the controls and the functions are just a little bit more elegant.
Y como él lo dijo, y quizás lo va a repetir varias veces durante la sesión, las funciones son muy similares, si no las mismas, simplemente que en la serie L se ve mucho más elegante.
So up on the third module, can you see my mouse, Paki?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so here we have our events on the IP12.
Aquí tenemos los eventos en la IP12.
And these are 4 snapshot recalls of the control surface, sources and bus assigns.
Entonces aquí tenemos los eventos que podemos cambiar tanto para los destinos como las fuentes en diferentes configuraciones de la consola. Ahorita vamos a ver cómo se hacen estos cambios y son 4 y están allí enumerados en la IP.
On the L12, we have an event button, which then we can scroll through multiple events with names.
En cambio, en la IP12 tenemos un botón de evento donde con el knob de arriba podemos ir escogiendo con nombres previos que ya los habíamos configurado en cada uno y después seleccionar el evento que queramos.
Okay. And then up here, these 2 controls are the pan, and in addition to, on the L12, in addition to the mode select, we also have panning. Panning is like balance, left or right. We
Okay.
don't use it a lot, but sometimes people need it.
Otra diferencia grande que también existe entre la IP2 y la L tiene, además de el modo que ya habíamos mencionado anteriormente, también tiene un botón para el paneo de cada uno de los canales, hacia izquierda o hacia la derecha.
And another difference between the two is when I want to change a source on the module here, I hold down the set button, and then over here in the display, I can choose the source and I can hit take. On the IP12 over here, I need to hold down an A button, and then when I spin the encoder, you've got to look at the meter bridge.
Entonces, otra gran diferencia es que al yo seleccionar la fuente en la L12, yo busco el botón AB, lo puedo ver en los displays de una forma sencilla y lo selecciono. En cambio, en la IP12, tengo que presionar la A, por ejemplo, dejarla presionada ciertos segundos, que ahorita lo va a detallar mejor, y tengo que obligatoriamente verlo desde el meter bridge.
Yeah. And so now in the Wheatstone evolution of consoles, we are getting ready to discontinue the E1, the LX24, and the E6.
Y ellos pronto en la serie E de Wheatstone, que es los hermanos mayores de estas dos, están comenzando, pronto van a descontinuar la serie E1, la serie E6 y la serie LX. So what is left over?
So now what we've done is this last module on the right makes the L12 the L series just as powerful as the LX, the E6, and the E1, because we've got an optional full EQ and dynamics module here.
Y entonces lo que están haciendo es, tienes una persona por entrar. Lo que están haciendo es agregando este módulo de ecualización, lo cual podrá hacer la serie L tan poderosa como lo era la serie E o la serie LX.
And last,
basically, James, just to understand correctly, so you guys are going to keep the DMX on audio arts, IP, L series, and then LXE.
GSX is going to be the new one that we're introducing this year. And GSX really is a light LXE, but a bigger LX board. So we have GSX. So it's going to be IP12, IP, L, GS, and LXE. GSX and LXE.
Ok, entonces a futuro, ya para el año que viene, comenzará un nuevo modelo que se va a llamar GXL.
And I'm sorry, I forgot to make a slide on it, but I just remembered. We also added a very good feature to the L series this year during the pandemic, and that is a remote interface screen.
Y algo que no lo puso ahorita en el slide, pero después espero que Darrin, quien va a dar la segunda parte de la charla, lo muestre, agregaron otro módulo que es para el funcionamiento remoto de la consola. Eso lo hicieron en estos meses por el tema de la pandemia.
So if you're going to be somebody that wants to completely run the console from home during these times, and I mean bus assigns, faders, source selections, everything you would do in a studio, that would be one reason to buy an L series over the IP series.
Entonces, si van a hacer funcionamientos remotos, y quieren controlar todo desde casa, absolutamente todo de la consola, eso dará una buena indicación que el modelo correcto a escoger sería la serie L.
So before I get on to talking about some features and showing the GUIs of these, are there any questions about the physical control surfaces IP12 or L12?
Entonces, antes de adentrarnos en la interfase de software de cada una de las consolas, ¿tienen alguna pregunta sobre esta parte de cómo lucen los módulos o el funcionamiento mismo de los módulos? Si gustan pueden hacer la pregunta ahorita, se desmutan o la pueden escribir. Tengo a César que nos está monitoreando. Y si no, podemos continuar y hacemos las preguntas al final, como ustedes prefieran. I see no questions, Jake, so let's continue.
Okay, so I want you to ask everybody out there that is a Wheatstone user, how many of them, if any, are using our bus minus features on these consoles?
¿Alguno de ustedes usa la función de bus minus en la consola?
Sí.
Yes, they do. Baldo, you said.
Okay, Baldo, you understand bus minus versus an output bus, correct? Yes.
Tú entiendes obviamente la diferencia entre un bus minus a una salida de bus.
Yep. Baldo, I have a question for Baldo.
It's for me?
Yes.
Of course.
Sí,
So you're using you use bus minus instead of the utility bus and the aux buses, right?
I didn't answer to you that I say yes. Salvador say yes, but I'm using it again.
Okay. Well, great. Well, one of the big things, and I'm just going to assume that a lot of people aren't using the bus minus.
aren't using.
Okay.
You are assuming that there are a lot of people that are not using, right? Él va a
Yes.
asumir que hay mucha gente que no está usando los bus minus.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do with bus minus, and every Surface has it, if you're a radio station and you need multiple mix minus,
Si ustedes son una radio que necesitan múltiples mix minus,
like you have caller 1, caller 2, and somebody on the tie line, and you want them to all communicate.
por ejemplo, tienen la llamada 1, la llamada 2 o alguien en algún códec y necesita que todos ellos se estén comunicando.
This is more and more special these days due to the pandemic and everybody being at a remote location.
Esto es mucho más común hoy en día por el tema de la pandemia y cada quien está en locaciones distintas.
If you utilize the bus minus, which is a direct out from every input channel of the board, you can have as many mix minus as you do faders.
Si tú usas la cantidad de bus minus, can you say that again, the explanation again, Jay?
Yes. Yep. So if you because of the pandemic now, a lot of the people are contributing are on a remote location. And if we have multiple callers or multiple remotes, it's essential that you use bus minus because there's not enough front panel control to create a lot of mix minus.
Entonces, ustedes pueden tener cuantos bus minus como faders de la consola tengan. So what you say is you can have as many bus minus as faders in the console you have.
That's right. So let's say I have an election in Peru and I have an IP12. I have my one microphone up, and then I have 11 people on the Comrex and tie lines.
Entonces, vamos a suponer, yo tengo unas elecciones, yo puedo tener mi micrófono 1 arriba y yo puedo tener los otros 11 faders, puedo tener cada uno de mis conrex o mis remotas o todas esas auxiliares, salidas, voces.
Yeah, and a lot of people, when I see them using the consoles, and this is true in Mexico and many places in South America, they're usually just using the utility bus to feed the caller and then not assigning the caller to the utility bus.
Mucha gente lo que hace es usar los utility buses, pero no los están asignando a un fader de la consola.
So by using the bus minus, you can have multiple mix minus simultaneously with an individual talkback to each of those on the module.
Entonces, usando el bus minus, ustedes pueden tener múltiples mix minus simultáneamente y pueden hablar individualmente con cada uno de esos mix minus.
So I'm going to go out here. Oh, Pocky, you're big on the screen here. Look, I see you. So this is the Wheatstone setup here. I'm actually going to stop sharing this, and then I'm going to go move over here, Alfonso, to...
Entonces, vamos a dejar de compartir ahorita esta pantalla y vamos a movernos a la consola que tenemos ahí en fábrica.
Okay, and so now I come here, and I want to share screen.
Si mientras tanto existe alguna pregunta, con muchísimo gusto.
Can I, you have to give me, thank you.
I need to have you as a co-host in another computer, Jay.
Yes, please.
But in which one? Because I don't see you.
Wheatstone?
Is it Wheatstone? They have Wheatstone? Yeah, I see him.
Right here. Yep.
I got it.
Okay, all right. Okay, so here. So what I hopefully you can hear me okay. So what I mean about bus minus, gentlemen, is I'm going to go to the IP12,
Entonces, lo que él quiere decir, hablando de bus minus, va a ir ahorita a una IP12.
All right, so here on the IP16 that is connected to this system, we
Entonces,
have
en
our
esta IP16 que está conectada al sistema, que es lo que tenemos al frente,
we have the front panel outputs, which everybody's used to: program, audition, aux, and offline/utility.
entonces aquí tenemos el módulo de salida, que es el que todos están familiarizados: audition, programa, auxiliar y offline utility.
Yeah, so these are the four main buses that many people use. Program goes to air, audition goes to record, and maybe the offline or utility goes to the telephone caller.
Entonces, estos son los buses que más comúnmente se usan. Programa va al aire, audition va a grabación, offline para las llamadas, etc.
So now we're going to look at these sources here. Since I have an IP16, you're going to see bus minus, which is BM, 1 through 16.
Entonces aquí tenemos estas fuentes que son bus minus de la 1 a la 16, que son la cantidad de faders.
So what you're going to see in your matrix is these are all going to be the sources that feed the return of the codecs or the hybrids.
Entonces esas son las fuentes que alimentan el retorno de los codecs o los híbridos.
So and I'm going to say on fader 16, I've got a Comrex. On fader 15, I've got a tie line. And on fader 14, I've got hybrid 2. And then I have hybrid 1 on fader 13. So,
por ejemplo, yo tengo en el fader 16, tengo un Conrex, en el 15 tengo un Thailand, en el 14 tengo un híbrido 2, en el 13 híbrido 1.
So these sources here would cross connect to the return. So once we've connected them, the board will automatically create a mix minus or bus minus for each of those remotes.
Entonces aquí vamos a hacer un cross point entre la fuente y el retorno.
Then you can take advantage of the talkback button on the module.
De esta manera, después puede tomar ventaja del botón talkback en el módulo de la consola.
That's right. So whether you're doing a live remote or you're in break, because it's router based, you can either, and then also we can set up a programmable button to talk to all the mix minuses at once in case you don't want to press every one on the module.
Inclusive podemos después seleccionar un solo botón de la consola para que yo pueda hablar con todos los mix minus al mismo tiempo para no hacerlo presionando cada uno de los botones individualmente.
Yeah, and one of the things that I personally love about South America, Alfonso, is that even your music stations, you have live people. So that means you have board operators and people that can do cool things with remotes and telephone callers. Here in the States, probably 75% of our radio is coming off a computer in a room with nobody in it.
Y una de las cosas que obviamente pueden tomar mucho ventaja de este tipo de consolas justamente son las estaciones de radio en Latinoamérica, donde los programas son bastante dinámicos, donde por lo general hay muchos invitados, hay muchas llamadas. En cambio, últimamente, pues en los Estados Unidos, cada vez los estudios están más vacíos, el 75% de la radio nada más tiene un control room con la persona y está todo programado haciendo los live simulaciones, off-air, etc.
Yeah. And so now what I'm going to do is, when I'm going to actually turn this over to Darrin, because I'm going to ask Darrin to take you through the GUIs between the L12 and the IP12, show everybody how we set up the mutes and tallies, how we do a basic system scan. And Darrin's just going to spend a little bit of time with you on going over that technical stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah, but you said something, you were going to do something before that?
No, I was going to turn it over to Darrin.
Ok, entonces, bueno, Jay nos va a acompañar hasta ahorita en esta introducción y ahora Darrin Paley, que es otra de las personas integrantes del equipo de Wheatstone desde hace muchos años, va a hablarnos más detalle de las interfaces de GUI de la IP12 y la IP16. Para los que no lo conocían a Darrin, él está en el equipo de ventas de Wheatstone, yo tengo entendido que desde hace ya unos 20 y tantos años, Él es originalmente de Canadá. Sus familias son distribuidores de equipos, al igual que 305 Broadcast, hacia Canadá. Pero Darrin se mudó a Syracuse, donde inicialmente estaba Wheatstone y luego se mudaron a New Bern, donde está actualmente la fábrica. Darrin, good morning. How are you? Welcome to this meeting.
Hey, Alfonso, Paki. How are you, buddy? Thank you for having me.
Very well, thank you. It's been years or months since I don't see you. Together with us, we have a group of good users of Wheatstone for several years. We have people from Multimedios and MBS in Mexico, as well as we have some friends from Peru and Paraguay that are here with us today. And at the same time, we are recording this session for future users, future Wheatstone users, so they can find this useful for their installations. So thank you and welcome again to your own presentation.
Yeah, no problem. Now, Alfonso, I got I think the computer that says Wheatstone. That's the one I'm going to share from, I think.
That's correct, yes. Okay. I just made you co-host on that computer.
Okay, so let me see how I can stop share. Why is it? I want to share from this one. I'm just trying to, why won't it share?
Permítanos un minuto mientras él se adapta a la máquina para que nos pueda hacer la presentación, por favor.
Okay. Do I see that there?
Yes. Entonces vamos a comenzar viendo más a fondo we're going to start with the IP12, correct, Darrin?
Yeah, we're going to start with the IP12, and the L series GUI for the console setup is pretty much identical. So when I cover the IP12, which is going to be right here on the screen, that's going to be the GUI that you open up to configure the IP12 console. And then this one here is going to be the L series. Now I don't have an L series connected, but I'll open it up, but it's pretty much identical as far as the setup goes.
Vamos a ir primero hablando la parte de el setup, que es básicamente idéntico en la IP12 como en la L, en la serie L. Ahorita nos vamos a conectar a una consola IP12, que es la que tenemos en este momento. Y después vamos a abrir el software, aunque no esté conectado, solamente para ver algunas de las diferencias. De todas formas, la mayoría de los usuarios que están hoy aquí presentes tienen la IP12, pero vamos a ver ambas de igual forma. Okay.
Perfect. So I'm gonna open the GUI here, which I already have it open down here. So I'll open it up, and what you'll notice here is it says IP12, but this is the same GUI for the IP16.
Okay. Aquí notamos que dice IP12, pero es exactamente igual a la IP16.
And right here is down here on the bottom, you'll see in the bottom corner here what console I'm connected to. So I'm going to change it because we have an IP16. I'm going to change it so that it is an IP16, and that's the IP address of the console that I want to connect to and configure.
Entonces, ahí en la parte inferior izquierda podemos ver a qué consola estamos conectados. De hecho, la consola que él tiene al frente es una IP16, así que acaba de cambiar para que sea el modelo IP16, y ese es el IP de la consola.
Okay, now one thing that a lot of people forget to do is when you select the console you want to be connected to, down here in the bottom left corner, it says online. So I want to make sure that that box is checked to connect to the console.
Algo que muchas veces puede pasar por descuido, que la gente se le olvida hacer, es seleccionar la consola y darle clic al botón de online para poder trabajar en ella.
Okay. Down over here on the corner, in this bottom right corner, it'll let you know if you're connected to the console or not. So this is telling me that I'm currently connected.
Aquí en la parte inferior izquierda te está diciendo si estás conectado o no.
Once you're connected, you can now go ahead and start making your configuration changes to the console. If you're not connected, nothing will actually be saved on your configuration to the console.
Entonces, una vez estás conectado, podrás hacer todos los cambios de configuración. Si no estás conectado, nada va a ser salvado.
Okay. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want, when you configure the console, it ships pre-configured already connected to the blade. IP address of the console will be 201 from the factory, an IP address 101 for the engine. It'll automatically be configured that way from the factory.
Entonces, al recibir la consola, esto ya va a estar preconfigurado en fábrica y la dirección de IP en el mainframe va a terminar en 201 y el Blade engine va a terminar en 101.
So what you want to make sure is if you're adding this to your current network that you do not have another surface configured as 201 or another blade on your network configured as 101, or you'll have an IP conflict right from the start.
Entonces, but this is when you're adding this console to a network, right?
Correct. Yeah. So if you already have a WheatNet IP system installed, when you're adding this console, you want to make sure that you don't have an ID 1 on any blade or IP address 101, or on a console a .201 or the same IP address already on the system.
Entonces, si están agregando una consola a su network, tienen que asegurarse, como la consola viene preconfigurada en fábrica con 201 y 101 en el blade, tienen que asegurarse de cambiarlo, porque el network existente ya tiene un primer blade o una primera consola que termina en 201 o 101.
So it's a good idea when you, if you already have a current system installed, or you're installing a system that you don't have a console yet, or you're already adding consoles to a system, try to keep anything off of 101 and 201, because if you add a surface in the future, they will always come pre-shipped as 101 and 201, and then you can change the IP address once you add them onto your system.
Understand, Darrin, I do have a question here. And they say that when you have many consoles in the same network, what do we need to do to change those IPs in the console? What you're saying right now, but what do we actually need to do?
Okay, so on the blade itself is pretty easy. You will do that in Navigator, or you will do that on the front panel of the blade. So you
En el blade es muy sencillo para responder la pregunta que hicieron en el chat, Valdo. En el Blade lo pueden hacer desde el Software Navigator o desde el mismo panel frontal del Blade.
Okay, on the console itself, if you get the console connected externally to your existing system or on your existing system, either or, you can go to hardware here, and basically you assign your IP address here.
Entonces, en la nueva consola, vas a hardware y le das a este botón que le dio. What was that button?
It's up here. It's up on the under here. I'll close it so you can see it again.
Yeah, thank you.
Hardware.
Assign
IP address.
Y después le das a donde dice assign IP address.
Okay.
Thank you.
It'll scan it, and you can change it right here. And you'll once the IP address changes, you'll reboot the console, and then you'll connect back up with the GUI, but you're going to have to remember on this one here, we're going to have to add or change the IP address to the console here.
Okay. Después vas a tener que hacer un reboot de la consola y después vas a tener que conectarte nuevamente con la que tiene el nuevo IP.
Yeah. Okay. So once you change the IP address here, you would then go click it and make sure you connect online. And then now you're connected to the console. Then you can go and change the actual blade it is speaking to.
Entonces, una vez que hiciste de nuevo el paso de ponerla online con ese nuevo IP address, vas a poder configurar de nuevo el blade.
Right. So right here on, so that's how you change the IP address. Is everybody okay with that, Alfonso?
Entonces, ahí es como cambias la dirección de IP para responder tu pregunta, Valdo. ¿Te respondí bien o te quedó alguna duda?
Okay. Next,
we're good.
We're good. Okay. So once you're connected to your current system or to all your blades on your network, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do a system scan. Right here under IP, WheatNet IP system scan.
Una buena práctica es lo primero que haces o al conectar una consola al sistema o bien sea la consola que estás iniciando a hacer una nueva red, es hacer un system scan.
Okay, you type in your host blade address and you say start scan.
You need to type the first blade address, correct?
The host blade of the console. So in this case, our host blade is 101.
But you need to type it or you will see it automatically?
It all depends. If you change the IP address of that blade, it will not see it. So you're always going to, so for instance, when we ship it from the factory, Alfonso, it is .101. But
Right.
if you've changed it while it's on the system, then you're going to have to go and put whatever address that is. So it could be 125,
Right.
whatever address that you've made that host blade of the
Right.
console.
Estamos hablando de ambos casos. Si es un sistema nuevo, ya viene preconfigurado de fábrica, ya te va a decir que es el 101 y le das Start Scan. Si estás agregando la consola a un sistema, debes asegurarte de poner el IP nuevo, que ya lo habíamos asignado anteriormente, bien sea 121, lo que sea, y después le das Start Scan. Okay?
Yep. And what this is doing, Alfonso, this is actually scanning the entire system of everything that you have in WheatNet IP. And what it does is it brings in all the names, the source names, destinations, all the information from the system to let this host blade know what everything is in the system.
Y básicamente lo que estás haciendo con esta función es que estás trayendo todos los nombres de todas las fuentes, mix minus, destinos, etcétera, del network entero que hay de audio para darle esta información a este host blade de esta nueva consola que se está incorporando al network.
And what it'll do, Alfonso, it'll update all that information over here, your sources, your destinations, all your information down on this side. So that way, when you go to start to do your mutes and tallies and mix minus configuration, bus minus configuration, you have all the most recent information based on your network.
De manera de que ahí podremos ver entonces en la pantalla de la derecha, vamos a poder ver toda esta información, como dije anteriormente, de los buses, de los tallies, de la lógica, etcétera, etcétera.
Yep. Okay, so once you've done that, now you're prepared to go and start configuring the console.
Una vez hecho esto, pues ya estamos listos para poder comenzar a configurar la consola.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to start going down to this left, all these tabs on the left side.
Y entonces lo que vamos a hacer es, vamos a empezar configurando cada uno de estos tabs que están en la mano izquierda.
So once you've connected the console to the system, you're going to go ahead and you're going to basically tell it what engine it needs to speak to. And that is going to be, in this case, we have Blade 101, but this is the engine on based on whatever IP address or ID number you gave the mix engine blade.
Right. So can you tell me where you go again?
Right here under the engine tab, the top left corner, Alfonso,
Okay.
right here.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll do is you'll type in the blade ID of that mix engine. And then if you don't know the blade ID, you click on this button here and you go and find your blade mix engine that you want the console to connect to and speak to.
Y entonces aquí tú vas a asignar a qué blade, si no lo ves, siempre el blade 1, cuando viene la consola es el blade 1, ahí tú vas a asignar a qué blade quieres que esta consola esté conectado.
Yep.
Because each console,
This would be for each console. So if you had
frame is going to be connected to one blade for itself, but of course it will see at the navigator each of the other blades in the network, right?
correct. So if you had 2 or 3 IP12s or L series, those blades will be listed here. So in this case, this IP12 that I have, or IP16, I'm sorry, I want this console to speak to this mix engine.
Entonces esta consola en particular va a hablar con ese mix engine que es el que vino con ella. Okay.
And by telling the console to speak to this mix engine, all the mixing and DSP for that console will be associated with that mix engine.
Entonces todo el mixing asociado con esta consola va a ser de ese blade.
Now, the next one down, we're still on the engine tab. The next one down, this is the mix input. So we're telling this mix engine how many faders does this console have. And in the IP series, we have 12 and 16. In the L series, we would choose 8, 12, or 16. It will be pre-configured from the factory. However, if you change things or you have to reboot something down the road, you may have to go and select your fader count here.
De nuevo, esto viene preconfigurado en fábrica, pero en caso de cambiar el mainframe que tenían, y tenían, por ejemplo, una IP12 y después cambiaron a una IP16, entonces aquí es donde le van a decir cuántos inputs tiene este nuevo Surface.
And another use for this is we do have some customers that buy an IP12, Alfonso, And what they'll do is they'll take out 4 faders and buy blanks and make it an 8 fader IP12. And here you can go down and you would be able to say, I only have 8 faders. And they would put the other faders on the shelf as spares.
Otro uso que se le ha hecho a esta función es que hay clientes que compran una IP12, pero realmente solamente la usan con 8 faders, entonces compran 4 blank banners y dejan los otros 4 faders como repuestos para cualquiera de las consolas del network que tengan.
Yep. And what basically it's doing, Alfonso, is it's going to be by adjusting that value right here, by adjusting that, what it does is it puts the correct amount of faders in your Navigator software.
Entonces, al ajustar eso de la manera correcta que queremos, entonces ella te va a poner en el Software Navigator el número de inputs correctos que tiene cada uno de los mainframes para poder hacer el crosspoint que queramos.
The next box here is, this box here is going to be for the meters on the meter bridge. And this is the same for the L series. You can pick what you want those meters to see, peak and average, peak only, average. And you can select this to be auto Q, which means when you put a fader in Q, it'll take the switched meter and make that a Q meter.
Okay. Entonces, esto aplica tanto para la IP12 como para la serie L. Y entonces aquí es donde yo le voy a poder decir cómo quiero que él vea los meters. Can you please press the pull down so I can see that again? Entonces yo puedo escoger si quiero que sea peak only o promedio solamente o peak y promedio. Y también puedo decir que cuando, what is this part that you said about the Q, Darrin? Can you say
right
that?
Here, if I select this, when I put a fader in Q, it'll take the switch meter and show the Q audio level.
Y aquí al presionar esto, cuando yo ponga un fader in Q, va a tomar el meter y va a seleccionar el nivel de audio de ese Q.
Yep. On the machine logic, this is this next thing here is this doesn't apply to the IP12 so much, but applies to the L series, where it tells me if I remote connect, I don't want LIO to activate. So sometimes when you're remote and you press the on button, you may not want a machine to start because you're not in the studio, so you can deactivate it here.
Okay, esto aplica más para la serie L, pero es cuando yo voy a actuar remoto. Si no quiero, cuando voy a meterme remoto en la consola y no quiero que me interfiera con la función actual, porque no hay nadie en el estudio, le doy clic allí.
Okay, now this little checkbox down here, Alfonso, this is kind of an important checkbox. What this is from the factory, when you connect the console to the mix engine, we automatically make these cross points for you from the factory, okay? So we automatically connect your headphone to the headphone output. We automatically connect the program bus to the program A output, B output, C output. So what that means, Alfonso, is anytime that I reboot the engine or the console, those cross points are automatically going to get made based on this checkbox. It's our factory.
Este botón es muy importante porque te vuelve a poner los settings de cross point originales que te había dado la fábrica. Por ejemplo, ya la fábrica te había puesto el cross point de la salida de audífono que vaya para el input de los audífonos, etcétera, cosas que son ya obvias, pero que en caso de que hubo algún cambio, yo puedo volver a ponerlas tal cual me lo envió la fábrica de la primera vez a la consola.
So where you would not want to have this checkbox checked, Alfonso, is if for some reason you're not going to use the outputs on the back of the engine for your program or your addition outputs, you're going to have those exit a different blade somewhere else. You would unlock, okay, and this now would not go out of the back of the blade. You would send that output to another blade down here, let's say. What that means, and I'll quickly explain it and you can explain it to them, what that means now is I want to make sure that I have this unchecked because when I reboot the engine or console, it will keep my cross points how I've set them up my way.
Okay. Entonces, por ejemplo, si yo estoy en un network de audio y esta consola en particular, yo no quiero que el output de la consola sea la salida de programa, porque yo quiero que la salida de programa vaya a un blade que tengo en el cuarto de ingeniería, en el TOC room, etcétera. Entonces, al darle right click y decirle unlock, can you do right click so I can see that button again? Unlock signal. Es que voy a poder quitarle esa funcionalidad de salida al blade, y tengo que asegurarme de que en el screen anterior yo haya desmarcado eso para cuando yo vaya a hacer un reboot al sistema no lo vaya a leer y me lo deje como yo había puesto esa configuración. Espero que me haya explicado bien. Acuérdense que estoy siendo traductor sin ser ingeniero.
Yeah, and now
what bien, por favor hagan preguntas, que para eso estamos, para ayudar.
Yeah. Now what this does, Alfonso,
I made the right translation, Darrin, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And what this does, Alfonso, now is on the back of the mix engine blade, the 4 analog outputs, the first 4, I can use these for anything else now I want to. A headphone feed, another external Q speaker feed. I can send it a mix minus output. It basically unlocks what the factory configuration is, and now I can go rename this to however I want to wire it to.
Entonces, al yo usar ahora esa salida de programa en otro blade, como pusimos el ejemplo hace unos minutos, entonces yo ahora puedo usar esa salida como yo se me antoje y le puedo poner el nombre que yo quiera, por ejemplo, para un invitado, para el audífono un invitado, o para alimentar un codec, o para alimentar otro estudio, etcétera, y ahí le pongo el nombre.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'll go rename this signal as guest headphone.
Entonces él ahorita va a ponerle el nuevo nombre a esa señal que se llame audífono del invitado, por ejemplo.
And now that output on the back of the mix engine blade would be my wiring that I go from the blade to the guest headphone amplifier.
Entonces ahora esa salida de ese blade va a ser el cableado que hice a ese invitado, el audífono de ese invitado. Esto es un ejemplo.
And then I would go and select a navigator, whatever I want their headphones to hear. Probably in this case, it would be program audio.
Y entonces ahora selecciono el cross point y le pongo la salida de programa y lo selecciono ahí, ya tengo el cross point hecho.
And chances are you're going to want to lock that signal so nobody changes it.
Y obviamente lo que quiero hacer es hacerle ahorita un lock para que nadie me lo pueda cambiar al momento que yo tenga que hacer algún reset o alguna cosa.
Yep. And all you do is right click and click lock. Now that means I can't change that audio unless I override the lock.
Okay. De esa manera no puedo cambiar el audio a menos de que yo haga un override de ese lock. ¿Tenemos otra pregunta?
Yo creo que está marcando uno arriba. Alarme un lock.
Well, they're asking me here, Darrin, what is, if you go to the previous screen on the navigator,
yeah.
Where it says alarm dog, do you have a number 1 over there?
I'm sorry, where was it?
In your screen, where it says alarm dog,
top? Right here.
On the top.
Yep.
System dog, then alarm dog. No, you have to go to the right.
Right here.
Top menu bar.
Oh.
Alarm dog. You have a number 1 over there in red.
Oh, okay. So what that's telling me is I have a silence detect. I have one notification in my alarm dock that something's gone wrong.
Okay. Él tiene ahorita una alarma de un detector de silencio que lo estuvimos viendo la semana pasada cuando estábamos viendo los navigators que estábamos configurando las alarmas.
Yeah, it's kind of like your phone, your iPhone, when you get an email or a text message and you have it.
Es una notificación de alarma.
Yep, tells you right there. Because if I have this closed, it still tells me I have an alarm.
Exacto. Es una forma rápida de ver de que tengo una alarma así haya tenido esa pantalla cerrada.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you, Darrin.
Yep. So now, so that's all we have for this this screen here.
Esta es esta sección de esa pantalla. Vamos al próximo tab.
And it'll tell you to apply changes before you leave. So if I hadn't gone and applied these changes that I made, you want to always hit save. If I didn't save them, it'll tell me before I go to the next screen to save them.
Okay. Y entonces, como se hacía tradicionalmente en los programas de Word, si no salvé y me voy a salir del tab, te va a preguntar si quieres salvar los cambios. Okay. Si ya hubiese salvado, no me lo pregunta.
So the next tab is what you're going to allow talent access or the board operator access. And
Entonces, en este tab son los accesos del operador de la consola.
okay, so what you can do here is you can allow them to save events or only allow them to take events.
Entonces, una de las cosas que puedo hacer es permitirles que salven eventos o permitirles que tomen eventos.
Typically, what most engineers will set is allow them to take events, because you as the engineer will set up the events, but you don't want them to override them.
Entonces, la mayoría, como buena práctica de los ingenieros, por lo general lo que hace es que les permite tomar eventos, no salvar eventos, porque por lo general el ingeniero quiere crear los eventos él mismo, pero no permitirle al operador que te cambie los eventos. Así que es una buena recomendación darle clic donde dice Allow Take Events y no Save Events al operador.
Correct. The next one is the X controllers, and at the top of the modules on the IP12 or IP series and L series, there's an A and a B button. And those two buttons you can save any source on your network to those buttons. So if you allow the user to override what you've done, this button will allow them to program a new source over what you have previously done. So this is just an access to either save on AB or have them not save on AB.
Very well. Entonces, en este botón, ¿se recuerdan cuando estábamos viendo los faders de tanto la IP12 como la L12? En la IP12 tenemos AB y en la L12 teníamos el botón de fuente y después el botón de select. Aquí es donde yo permito, primero, como ingeniero, configuro, si yo quiero, yo puedo tener desde el A o B, dejándolo presionado físicamente, yo puedo seleccionar cualquier fuente de audio que yo tengo en mi network y lo puedo dejar configurado en el caso de la IP12, el A o B, o en el caso de la L, tantos sources yo quiera por canal. Pero aquí es donde yo permito que él pueda agregar más fuentes a su antojo o no. Entonces, si como ingeniero no quiero que él agregue fuentes a su antojo en cada uno de los inputs modules, ahí es donde lo voy a permitir. Si no me expliqué bien, espero que así lo haya hecho. Por favor, hágame preguntas.
Yeah, and Alfonso, this only allows them not to program, that they can still select another source anywhere in the system. It just does not allow them to physically save it to one of the AB buttons. So it's still open to whatever you've set that module to see. They just can't physically save it to the AB for a hot button.
Claro. Ellos van a poder tener todavía la flexibilidad de escoger alguna fuente del sistema, si se lo permite en la misma consola, pero no va a estar salvado en el botón.
Okay, and then this next section allows you to either allow them to assign the 4 output buses or not. So for instance, if you say that OL, right here, this OL bus is always going to my phones for recording, I want everything to have to go to the phones. You can select this bus, which will allow them to assign it or not assign it.
Entonces, esta es para poder permitirles que puedan asignar o no asignar cualquier salida, cualquier bus a esos botones.
Yeah. So that's it for the call it talent or user access.
Entonces, este tab es el de talentos o usuarios, acceso a los usuarios.
What I'll do is I'm going to go to the next tab called Vdips, and when I do that, it's probably going to ask me if I want to save my settings for this or not. So again, it says, do you want to apply the settings before I leave this tab? I'm just going to say no because...
Entonces, al igual que con el tab anterior, si no lo salvé, me va a preguntar si lo quiero salvar o no.
Yeah. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to assign the Vdip settings. This is like the dip switches always have been on your analog consoles. We just call them virtual dip switches now.
Entonces, esto es asignar los Vdips. Es como los dipping switches de las consolas analógicas. Aquí se llaman virtual dips.
So the first thing we need to do, Alfonso, is we need to go ahead and we need to apply the signal that we're going to apply the dip switch settings to. So right here is, let's say we're just going to do mic 1 right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add.
Vamos a suponer que vamos a agarrar el micrófono 1.
Yep, right here we're going to go see the signal we want to want to set dip switches to.
Vamos a agarrar la señal a la que queremos asignar dip switches.
Oops, I think it's up here. I see they haven't been, the names haven't been configured for this. So I'm going to use one that is already in the system, just so we're going to call it DP mic. Okay.
Vamos a poner, por ejemplo, ese que se llama micrófono DP.
Okay. And this is wired on a different blade. It's not coming in the engine blade, but anytime this microphone gets put onto this IP12, these dip switches will apply.
Entonces, en este caso, esta fuente no está en el blade de la misma consola, está en otra del network, pero lo que le estamos diciendo aquí es cada vez que yo tome esta fuente, la configuración de los dip switch que se va a establecer es la que nosotros ahorita le vamos a poner.
So the first thing I'm going to want to do, I'm going to, when this microphone is on this console, I'm going to want to mute the control room.
Entonces, lo primero que quiero hacer es cuando este fuente vaya on, quiero hacerle mute al control room.
Yep.
Al estudio.
I'm going to mute. So this microphone, when it's on the console, will mute the control room, studio, and queue. And I also want it to turn on the on-air light, which is wired to my Studio Tally 1.
Y entonces también quiero prender la luz al aire que está cableada al el DP mic, el tally de ese blade.
And then maybe I want to have end of fader start. Maybe I want to have it reset the timer.
Aquí le puedo seleccionar que cuando yo suba ese fader me pueda hacer un restart del timer.
And I also want the OL bus to be pre-on.
What is the OL bus before I translate it?
That was, so you have 4 buses. It's the Program Addition Auxiliary Utility, or OL offline, it stands for.
Understand. Y también puedo asignar que cuando prenda ese micrófono también me prenda el bus de utility, el OL bus para grabarlo, por ejemplo.
Okay.
¿Vale?
And what that basically means is that in this scenario, if I have OL pre-fader and OL pre-on checked, that on this particular fader for this particular source, the OL bus will have pre-audio regardless if the fader is up or the channel is on, always going to that bus.
Y al asignar esto siempre va a ir a ese bus, además.
Yep. And then down here, Jay talked about bus minuses previously that I heard. Down here, this is going to allow you what your bass mix or what bass mix do you want this mic to be part of. Typically, most people will select OL.
Y entonces aquí es donde voy a asignar a qué bus mix minus lo voy a asignar. Por lo general, la gente siempre lo pone en el OL.
And that now, by this setup, this is telling me that the microphone is going to be in the OL bus to feed the phones or feed the remotes.
Y entonces aquí estoy diciendo que este micrófono me va a estar alimentando el bus OL para que vaya a los codecs o al teléfono.
Correct. And then no matter what this is doing now is no matter if the fader is up or down or the fader is on or off, this microphone will always go out of the OL bus no matter what state that is in, that module.
Y siempre este micrófono va a ir a esa salida, a ese bus.
Yep. And what I would do then is I would hit, hold on here. I'm going to add a second signal now.
Ahora voy a agregar otra segunda señal.
And I'll go find my microphone, microphone 2. Let's just use Phil's name here.
Vamos a agarrar un micrófono número 2, por ejemplo.
And I'm going to the same settings.
Le estamos haciendo los mismos settings.
For the mute and the
para
on-air.
El tema del mute y para la luz al aire.
However, I can have a completely different setup for any of these for that particular source of microphone.
Y aquí puedo hacerle un seteo distinto al anterior, for example.
Yep. So for example,
what would you do different?
Yeah, on this one, maybe what I'll do is I will go ahead and have it pre-on, and I'll that's the only thing I'm going to do. So what happens on this one now is if I want him to be part of the OL bus, I have to have his fader up. But on my microphone, I don't have to have my fader up.
Ok. En este caso, para que pueda activarse ese micrófono, necesito tener el fader arriba.
Okay. So you can have completely different setups for each source that appears on this particular console.
Okay, I have a question here, Darrin.
Yep.
Let me go read it for a second. It says that, can you save the settings so it can be applied to multiple microphones?
Not on
duplicate.
Duplicate the exact settings for each one.
Yep.
Hold on, let me see. I'm just checking. I know on our other consoles like the GSX, LXE, LX24, E6, you can do that. I'm not sure if we can do that on this particular one. Let me check.
Sure. Ya te lo va a confirmar. Él sabe que en las otras series más grandes sí se puede, pero va a confirmar que en esta sí también se pueda.
Okay, what I would do, no. So on this particular, no, you have to go through each one individually.
No, en este caso de la IP12 o la L12, IP12 and L12, you have to do it individually, correct?
Yes.
Yes, entonces en el caso de la IP12 y la L12, tienes que hacerlo individualmente cada uno. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. On your desk.
Ooh. Okay, so again, remember we talked about the system scan, Alfonso. What that system scan did is every time I go in here to add, I'm going to this list over here, and it allows me to see all of the signals in my system for anything that I may want to apply Vdip settings to for that particular console you're configuring.
Right, but why should I do it right now again?
Do what now?
Why do I need to do the system scan?
Oh, you don't. I'm just referring to before. Remember, I mentioned we did a system scan. You don't have to do it now. That's why I said right at the very beginning, let's do a system scan, because when you get to the Vdip settings, it has all the current information for when I have to add. This is where the system scan came into play. It updated all the information here, and that's what I'm picking now to program for this console.
Estamos mencionando nuevamente la utilidad del system scan. Yes, we can move forward.
Okay, good. Any questions on Vdip settings? Because I'm going to
Una pregunta en el seteo de los deep switch o los virtual deep switch. I do think we have a question. Sorry, 1 second.
That's okay.
No, yes, no, we don't have questions right now.
Okay. So monitor config. Again, it's going to remind you if you want to save your changes before you move to the next tab.
Entonces, esta es el tab de configuración de monitores.
Yeah. So on monitor config, this is essentially configuring your control room monitors, headphone, and studio monitors based on if you want them to just have your standard audio for monitoring, or if I put something into queue, do I want the queue to come into the control room monitors or the headphones or the studio?
Can you say that again in an easy way for me to translate? Sorry, my brain is starting to get confused.
So what typically would happen is you would have your control room monitors and your headphones, and then your studio monitors would get your program audio or your whatever you're listening to. This section here allows you to check whether if I put something into queue that you want it to interrupt what you're currently listening to and listen to queue.
Okay. Entonces aquí en caso yo tengo configurado de fábrica que lo que va al control room está el control room, lo que está en los audífonos, pero aquí yo puedo decir que yo puedo interrumpir lo que está en el queue. So I can interrupt from where? From which source, for example?
So what you in this scenario, if I click this, Alfonso,
Yes.
what would happen now if I pressed? So let's say I'd be listening to program. You know, that is what it's going out to air. However, I go ahead and I say, hey, do I have somebody on remote? I want to put them into queue. If I put them into queue, what it'll do is it'll interrupt the on-air audio that I'm listening to and put the queue audio in my headphones.
Ah, ok. So, entonces, si yo tengo por lo general los audífonos, lo que está saliendo en programa, al poner esto, al yo ponerlo en queue, él automáticamente va a interrumpir lo que está en programa y me puede entrar lo que viene de alguna remota. Entonces, cada vez que yo ponga queue, va a interrumpir lo que está en programa, en audífonos que estaba originalmente. Okay?
Right. And then when you take that module out of queue, the program audio, whatever you were listening to before, will come back.
Y cuando quites ese audio del queue, entonces el programa volverá a ese audífono. Por ejemplo, aquí es donde puedo hacer el control de eso. Okay, perfect. We can move forward.
Now this right here is what we call level locked. And what this does is it pretty much would typically mostly apply to this particular output, but we've added to them all. But what this does, Alfonso, is if you have a talk studio and you have speakers in there, typically you're sending audio from your studio output module on your console. If they have a level control for their monitors in their studio, you want to level lock this in the GUI so that your volume at the console does not adjust the speakers in the talk studio.
Understand. Esto por lo general, aunque está, esa función está en las tres salidas, por lo general, más que todo aplica en la cabina de locución, level lock, para que yo no pueda tener más de ciertos nivel de salida en esos speakers donde está los talentos, para que no pueda interrumpirse, o feedbacks, etc.
Yep. Now, typically, I don't know, like I said, I don't know why you would do it on these two because that's controlled at the console.
Realmente él no sabe por qué lo habrán puesto en los otros dos. Ahora, a lo mejor una necesidad especial, ellos lo pusieron de todas formas, pero donde se usa es en el estudio donde están los talentos, por lo general. Got it.
If for some reason you wanted to ever lock the level of those, headphones and control room, you have the ability to do so.
Got it.
Okay. So that's the monitor config. So on the IP series, we have 6 programmable buttons, which is over in the control room section. And this is an area where you configure on how you want that button to operate, not necessarily what the button's programmed to do. It's just more, do you want it to do a tally, to light up? Do you want it to be a toggle button? Do you want it to be a momentary surface button? So this is just how the button operates, not what's programmed to it.
Entonces, en la consola IP tenemos 6 botones programables y aquí le asignamos qué es lo que quieren que haga. Si va a ser relacionado al tally. Can you please define for me, because I don't know. I know tally is the light, but what is toggle? And what
Toggle would be that I push it to activate something, I push it again to stop.
And that's the toggle.
Yeah, that just think of a toggle switch where you push it up and it stays on all the time. You push it down, it stays off. So it'd be one press to stay on, one press to stay off.
Okay, toggle es para si al darle a un solo botón siempre va a quedar arriba o va a quedar abajo, o si le puedo dar on off. Entonces aquí lo puedo mencionar con esos botones. Momentary surface LED.
That would be a momentary. I hold it down to activate the function and I release it to stop.
Si quiero que el botón sea que yo momentáneamente le haga un push y cuando lo quite deja de hacer esa función.
Yeah, and then this would be, that's activated at the surface.
Este es en el surface.
This would be activated LIO for logic. I would activate an LIO.
Y el de abajo va a ser para hacer también de la misma forma un push, pero alguna función de lógica. Entonces, aquí simplemente lo que le estoy diciendo es cómo quiero que se comporte cada uno de los botones. Todavía no le estoy diciendo con qué lo va a hacer. So here I'm just saying the behavior of that button. I'm not telling him you're going to do that with this functionality. I need to configure that, right?
Correct.
Okay, exacto. Entonces aquí nada más le estoy diciendo cómo va a ser el comportamiento de ese botón. Después tengo que asignarlo a algo que lo veremos más adelante.
So for instance, if you want to make one of those buttons a talkback button, Alfonso, typically that would be a momentary surface.
Okay.
And that means now I would hold the button down to talk back to somebody and I would release it and it would release it.
Por ejemplo, si yo quiero que el botón sea un talkback, por lo general la gente lo pondría para que tenga un comportamiento de un momentary surface. You mentioned that on the IP12 I have 6 programmable buttons, and on the L series, how many do we have?
Aha, you beat me to it. That was my next thing. All right. Good minds think alike, Alfonso.
Thank you, sir.
So the IP series has 6 buttons. It works a little bit differently on the L. The L8 will have 8 buttons, 5, 6, 7, 8. The L12 will have 12 buttons, and the L16 will have 16 buttons.
Got it. Okay, entonces en la IP12 tenemos 6 botones. En la serie L depende del tamaño del mainframe, de manera que en la L8 tendremos 8, en la 12, 12 y en la 16, 16. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the reason why that is on the L series, Alfonso, is the soft buttons on the L series are at the top of the fader modules. So if you have 8 faders, you have 8 buttons. If you have 12 faders, you have 12 buttons. They're not located in the monitor section like the IP series is.
Claro, y la razón por eso es porque los botones en la serie L está en la parte superior de cada módulo. Y en cambio en la IP12 está hacia el lado de donde está el control room module, el módulo.
Yep.
Okay.
So the last tab that you're going to work with here is Visibilities.
El último tab con que vamos a ver de configuración de la consola es el de visibilidad.
So what this is telling you is this is saying what sources can I see or do I want my users to see on each one of the faders of your console?
Ya. Entonces aquí es donde yo le voy a decir qué fuentes yo quiero que mi usuario pueda ver en cada uno de los inputs de la consola.
So if I'm going
to say sources,
Sources.
About that blade related to the console or the whole network?
Okay, good question, Alfonso. So it's the whole network. So on channel 1 right now, right here are all my blades that I have in the network or any of my sources, okay? So now I can go ahead and drill down. Do I want them to see the whole blade? Do I just want them to see the first source on that blade? Or do I want them to go over here and see utility mixers or anything on the system that you want that module to see? This is where you would select those sources.
Understand. Ok, entonces aquí, por ejemplo, yo le puedo asignar que en el canal 1 yo tengo aquí todos los blades de mi network de audio y yo puedo dejarles saber al operador que él tenga acceso a todos los audios del network, de todos los blades. Si tengo 30 blades, que vea las fuentes de los 30 blades, y puedo seleccionar ahí cada blade, o puedo asignarlo de este blade, quiero que nada más vea este y este input, y de tal otro este y este, o solamente del principal. Aquí tengo acceso a todos los blades del sistema y puedo asignar qué es lo que quiero que vea en ese canal. Y después voy so when I change here, I press save, and then I go to the next channel, etc., right?
Correct. So for instance, on channel 1, I want to see this blade right here is my mix engine blade for the IP16.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I could if I had renamed these mic 1, mic 2, mic 3, mic 4, they would appear there. In this case, I have an M4. So I'm going to say I want mic 1, the fader 1 only to see mic 1. And then I would go here and save.
Understood.
Okay. And then I would save it to my IP12 config. And do I want to replace it? Yes.
Do you always have to save it to the IP12 config as you just did?
You can make as many saves as you want. I'm just going to override what I've done because I'm working on this console. Okay. So because this is the overall, I've already saved everything I've previously done. So this will just add to it.
Okay. Bien, entonces, para poder traducir bien, yo voy salvando cada canal. Una vez que hago un cambio en un canal, lo salvo. Y yo, en este caso, él lo salvó dentro de la misma configuración que tiene en la IP12. y le hice un override a lo que ya tenía, pero yo puedo hacer cuantos diferentes save yo quiera para tener simplemente el trabajo mejor guardado o cuidarme las espaldas, etc. Okay?
And then this little button up here allows you to have a no source signal. And what that just means is on the fader, it'll just tell you that there's no source connected to it. If I uncheck that, you won't have that option. There'll always be something connected to that module.
But why would you do that?
It's a dummy source. It's some people want to have the ability to say that there's no source on there, assign what you want to assign to it. Sometimes they just keep it in that state so that the user knows that they can use that fader for whatever they want to.
Ah, okay.
You know, it's a dummy source that has no audio on it.
Y esa función de arriba, hay gente que no tiene función para ponerle algún input de la consola y quiere que le diga que no tiene fuentes, porque realmente no hay ninguna fuente asignada. Entonces ahí, al darle ahí, le va a decir no tienes ninguna fuente. De esa manera estará siempre pendiente. Si quiere en un futuro programarlo alguna fuente, se lo puede programar. De lo contrario, if you don't do that and you don't have any source, what will it says then?
You don't have the ability to assign it nothing unless you go to Navigator and take off.
Ok. Si eso no estuviese asignado, entonces él no pudiese asignar desde la consola ninguna fuente. No lo permitiría al usuario. Espero me haya explicado bien. Si no, me lo pregunten y lo puedo aclarar con mucho gusto de nuevo. Ok. Perfect.
Yes. So sometimes, Alfonso, what people use this for is another scenario that if I'm doing voice tracking and I'm using the console on the air, if they change the event of the console, they may have a bunch of faders that say no source so that you don't mistakenly turn something on and it goes out to air.
Okay. En Estados Unidos, una práctica que es muy habitual es hacer voice tracking, falsos en vivo, para después ponerlo dentro del sistema de automatización, y muchas veces eso lo hacen con un segundo, tercero o cuarto evento de la consola. Entonces es preferible, para no confundir al operador que está en uno de los eventos u otro, y que no se equivoque mientras está haciendo el voice tracking, por ejemplo, en el evento 2, porque la consola en el evento 1 está al aire. Entonces es una buena práctica simplemente para no confundirse. ¿Ok?
Yeah. Is there any other questions on that? One thing, Alfonso,
Sure.
is after you've made some of your changes here, you don't have to go to the save. You hit apply, and when you're done all your configuration, that's when you would save. I'm sorry, I should have
Otra
meant.
forma de salvar esto es dándole apply, y cuando termines de configurar todo es que le das save.
Yeah. So that way you're building your console configuration with everything you want to do, and then you would hit apply, and then move to the next tab, do whatever you.
So you can have a different save as you did before.
After I'm all done, I'll go and save this as Studio One
or
IP,
or Wheatstone training.
or Wheatstone training, whatever it is. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Because every time you hit save is when you're gonna assign a name or override it, right?
Correct.
When you're doing apply, it's just overriding it.
Yeah, while you're doing apply, what you're doing is, so if I go over here and say here, this and this.
It lets you move from one screen to the other one.
I apply it, and now I can move to my visibilities, make a change, apply. That has kind of saved the whole console config. Now I want to back it up and save it completely. I would go over here and say, okay, override my changes. Yes, it saved everything.
Otra forma de navegarlo, manejarlo, es cada vez que yo haga un cambio en cualquiera de los tabs, le voy dando apply, y entonces al final es que le hago el save, y ya después decido si quiero override el save anterior o le pongo un save nuevo. Okay?
Yep. And then I would go, just like this.
Got it.
Okay. Now the
one second, Darrin, because we do have a question. it says, can you save the settings so it can, no, sorry, I'm reading the wrong question. So is the configuration file can be applied to any model? So.
Yes. However, if you have an IP12 and you're applying it to an IP16, it would only apply that to the first 12 faders, and you would have to go configure whatever those 4 other faders are.
Got it. So from these, for example, if I bought a bunch of consoles, I bought 3 consoles that are going to 3 different places, but they will have exactly the same configuration, so I can have that saved and then get that file and put it on my other consoles.
That's right. So you would connect to the console that you're configuring.
Really?
I go to my restore. You would take your IP12 config and go ahead and open it. And what it's going to do is, do you want to send the new config info? Yes. And it would push it all to the console. So if you're configuring 3 different consoles the same way, this is where you would do that.
Actually, I think in this presentation, we have a user who just purchased 8 IP12.
Yep.
And they're going to different locations, so this will be the right way. Let me just say that. Por ejemplo, sé que dentro de las personas que están ahorita en esta presentación, uno de ustedes acaba de comprar 8 consolas que van para 8 sitios distintos. Entonces, de esta manera puede, y son, si fuese el caso que van a tener el mismo tipo de programación, configuración, configuraron una, salvan esa configuración, y ya después sería simplemente agarrar ese file y ponerlo en cada una de las otras consolas. Así que hace el trabajo una sola vez. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and what he would do is, in that he has 8 consoles, he would have right down here, Alfonso, he would have all 8 down here. Okay.
But they're going to different locations.
Yeah, but yeah, so you would have, console number 1 would be this IP address, console number 2, this IP address. And what I would do is I would select the one I want to connect to, and then go to restore, and then go pick the configuration I want to send to it.
Ok. Entonces, en ese caso que acabo de mencionar, aquí tendría listado cada una de las consolas, la va seleccionando y después le da restore y busca el file con la configuración que había hecho en la primera. Okay.
Yep. And then that would send the whole configuration just like the one that you configured. You can quickly program all of them with the same settings, and then maybe go alter them afterwards a little by little.
Understood.
Yep. So essentially, the L series GUI.
Entonces, esto es lo que serían los settings de la IP12. Vamos realmente con la L8 es prácticamente igual, excepto por esto que vamos a ver ahora.
Yeah. You have a few different things that you can do on the L series. I don't have one connected here, Alfonso, so I won't be able to show some of this because it can't connect.
Sure.
But I'll show you a few of the difference.
Les vamos a mostrar algunas de las diferencias en la configuración entre la IP12 y la L8, aunque en este momento no tenemos la consola conectada, de manera que a lo mejor no vamos a poder ver la data, pero vamos a poder ver los tabs.
So the first thing it has the OLED displays. So you can set the dim levels and go to sleep for the displays to save the longevity and life of the displays.
Entonces, claro, la primera diferencia en la consola son los displays que tiene en cada uno de los inputs mayores. Y entonces aquí yo puedo hacer el seteo del display para cada uno de los niveles.
The second thing we have is we have the ability to put the time in the actual display in the control room seconds, so you can set how you want to display the time.
Entonces puedo también seleccionar cómo quiero que se vea la hora, porque en la IP12 no lo hago.
And then because we can have more information in the displays, we can actually have it visually show not only the source name, but we can have the source location. So you would be able to, for the customer with the 8 consoles, he may have mic 1 8 times, but it could be mic 1 in Studio 1, mic 1 in Studio 2, mic 3, or mic 1 in Studio 3. So in the display, it would show not only the source, but where that source is actually located.
Entonces, como en la versión L, tengo más información en ese display, no solamente puedo ver la fuente, pero sino también puedo ver la localización, dónde está ubicada esa fuente. Entonces, por ejemplo, puedo tener micrófono 1 del estudio 1, micrófono 1 del estudio de periodistas, micrófono 1 del estudio de grabación. Y entonces puedo ver 3 micrófonos 1, pero puedo saber de que están ubicados en 3 sitios distintos.
Okay. Some of the things that we have is the talent access.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's the same, except for you have the ability to preload events on the hot buttons or on the configurable buttons. Remember, we had 6 configurable buttons on the IP series. On here, we have 8, 12, or 16. I can load events of the console onto those buttons.
Okay, entonces otra diferencia es que como en esta tenemos más botones que se pueden configurar, yo le puedo asignar a esos botones nombres de eventos para poder llamarlos desde ahí mismo.
And also, I can name the event, so in the display it tells me what event, morning show, drive home.
Y obviamente, a diferencia de la IP, que la IP cada evento es 1, 2, 3 y 4, aquí yo le puedo poner nombres. Entonces, el show de la mañana, el show de mediodía, etcétera.
And then on here, I can assign my EQ. If you have the EQ option, I can assign the EQ or have them not be able to adjust the EQ. So the module can still be in the console, but the actual buttons and settings don't do anything based on you having them access to it or not.
Why do I have only 4 channels for the EQ?
I can't. I think this was. I don't know why there's only 4 channels here.
It will be depends on the amount of faders on the console, right?
Right, and I'm not connected right now. See, I must.
Sure. So probably this was that they as you just said in there previously, they limited to X amount of faders, probably, right?
Correct. So the four mic channels would have the.
Aquí es donde yo configuro los EQ o permito que el operador pueda cambiar los EQ. Yo le pregunté por qué me salían solamente 4, porque deberían salir el número de canales que la consola tiene, pero como esta GUI no está conectado a ninguna consola, probablemente le habían limitado, como lo vimos anteriormente, a que sea solamente de 4 faders, por eso es que vemos ahorita 4 canales. All right?
Yep. And this is going to be pretty much the same as the last one, except I have the ability to, so everything's the same up to this section right here, Alfonso. I have the ability to change my direct outputs. So bus minus, we can change it to be a direct output and not use the bus minus, and I can have that direct out be pre-fader or pre-on. For instance, maybe I want to send my microphones to a logger for recording, or maybe I want to send it to some sort of multi-track recorder.
But sorry, I like to understand this a little bit better in order to translate it, because it has the same blade. So how can you have the direct output?
So
from the fader, you mean?
Yes, correct. Put so the bus minus for each fader. Each fader has a bus minus output. On this console, you can change it to also be a direct output, which means, okay, I'm not going to use a bus minus on mic 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to use those to send to a logger just to record my microphone all the time.
Entonces, en esta consola, yo tengo la habilidad no solamente de tener un bus, pero puedo asignar que ese bus vaya directamente a una salida de la consola. Por ejemplo, si lo quiero que se grabe a un logger. Entonces, aquí es donde puedo asignar.
So in a bus minus, it removes the source from the output. If you configure it as a direct output, it actually takes that source and sends it directly out that output for.
Entonces, de esa manera, agarra la fuente y la manda directamente a la salida.
And this is telling me how you want that direct output to operate. Do I want it to be pre-fader and pre-on? This means in this setting, I don't have to have the fader up, or don't have to have the channel on. Audio is always going out of that direct output.
Y lo que quiere decir pre-fader o pre-on es si tengo que tener el fader levantado o no lo tengo que tener levantado.
Yep. So that's the only difference there. Monitor config's the same.
Monitor configs es lo mismo.
Yep. And your buttons, I'm not connected, so It would only show me 16 if I have a 16 fatal.
Ahorita no está conectado, por eso es que salen tantos, pero te saldría el número de botones según la consola que tengas.
Okay.
Got it.
And then visibilities
Exactly the same.
is exactly the same. It's just laid out a little different.
Okay.
The channels here, and then it would give you your blade list here.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. Other than that, there's a locator here. This little tab
Algo
here.
que tiene adicionalmente el GUI de la L es que tiene un tab que se llama Locator.
And when you hit refresh here, it'll scan the system and it'll show you everything that's in your WheatNet IP system, what it is, the IP address, subnet mask, gateways.
Just as the navigator, but from this GUI, correct?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Just like the locator and navigator.
Just the new version of the navigator. Got it. Entonces, aquí ese locator tiene esta misma función que vimos la semana pasada en el Software Navigator, que ahora las nuevas versiones del Software Navigator tiene ese tab de locator para yo saber con mucho más detalle todo lo que tengo en el sistema con configuración, nombres, direcciones de IP, etc.
Yep. And the same thing on this console with the L series, you're going to want to do a system scan. Just like
igual que con la serie IP, siempre al configurar una consola, una buena práctica es primero hacerle un system scan.
Okay. Other than that, the two GUIs for console setup is pretty much identical, other than the few things that I showed you that was a little bit different.
Otro de lo que acabamos de mencionar, pues por lo demás todo es idéntico a lo que vimos previamente con la IP12.
Any questions, Alfonso? Or
¿Alguna pregunta? Porque ya estamos finalizando. Este es el mejor momento. Por aquí tenemos una pregunta. Yes, we do have a question. 1 second, let me read it. Hold on. I have problems with my mouse. Yes, where are the last versions of the IP12 and the L12 available so people can download them? Baja help about?
Yep. Oh, sorry. So, yeah. So what you want to go to is help.
Yes.
About version 222.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the IP. And
that's the last version?
Yeah, that's the same for, oh, this is 2016.
Yeah, I don't think so. Exactly.
You know what, Alfonso?
But the question is where to download it.
Where to,
go to the Wheatstone website, right?
Oh, where do they get it? They would email tech support at wheatstone.com.
Okay.
And request the IP12, the latest IP12 GUI and firmware.
Okay, got it. Deben escribir a techsupport@wheatstone.com y pedir the latest, la última versión de GUI y de firmware de la consola que tengan IP12, IP16 y ellos se la envían. Cualquier cosa, si necesitan ayuda, también me pueden copiar o escribirme y yo con gusto les hago la interfaz. Vale, la orden. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the, hold on here. Where's my refresh? This is the latest version of software for the blades is 3.826.
Por los blades, esta es la última versión, 3.8.26.
Yep.
Que la semana pasada Jay nos estuvo mencionando que es importante que estén en la última versión, que los actualicen. Y nos mostró cómo. Al igual que esta sesión, la sesión pasada quedó grabada, de manera de que cualquiera de los que están ahorita participando, si gustan tener acceso a cualquiera de las dos sesiones, me puede ir escribiendo un email, lopez@305broadcast.com, y yo con gusto les mando el link que es privado para cada uno de ustedes.
Yep. Okay. So what we're doing now to make it easier, Alfonso, every time you get an update for the blades 3.826, you will get a new navigator. When you install the navigator, it will automatically, when I go to, it will automatically, sorry. It will automatically have 326 in a file for you. So you're going to install Navigator, and then you go to update your blades. When you go to update, this will...
So every time you update the Navigator, you're going to get the update for the blades.
Correct. It's going to be in a file that's already loaded when you do the update of Navigator.
Cada vez que ustedes actualicen el Navigator, automáticamente se les entrega la actualización última del blade, de los blades. Good.
Okay.
And is that upgrade for the blade the same for the IP88 AAD M and the M4 IP?
All blades.
Yo le pregunté que si la actualización de los blades era la misma para los AAD M o el de micrófono M4, y la respuesta es que sí.
Yep. So in this case right here, Alfonso, here's my mix engine blade.
Okay.
Okay. And blade 3 right here, that is my mic blade, my M4. And this is a AD blade. So I have all different blades here. And what I would do is I would select all of them. This is telling me right now what version I'm running on them. And I would just go ahead and hit update.
Got it. Yes. Yes. And we saw that in the last practice. Esto lo vimos la semana pasada y como les dije está grabado. Okay. ¿Alguna otra pregunta antes de finalizar?
Existen actualización para Talent Station.
Are there any type of upgrades for the talent stations?
Not as many as you would see on blades or consoles, but there has been an update for the talents, the TS4s. There has been an update, and I believe that update was several years ago. Okay. So they can check with support saying, is there what's the current version for TS4s? And they could send them the current version.
Claro, pueden escribir a soporte, no han hecho desde hace varios años, no han hecho ninguna, pero si quieren pueden preguntarle a soporte comparado con la que ustedes tengan y se las pueden enviar. De la misma forma me pueden copiar y yo les puedo hacer esa interfaz de comunicación.
Yeah, and I think if they haven't shipped it, if theirs doesn't have it already, the update will give it to them. But I believe the only change on the last update we did for TS4s was a pan or / balance.
El último update que se hizo hace años, la única diferencia es que tenía una funcionalidad de paneo. Okay.
Other than that, everything else was the same.
Perfect. Darrin, I think, I don't know if you have something else to cover, but I think we are right on time.
Yep. I think Jay said that there's going to be another session in a few weeks or something.
Yes, there will be another session on January 7th, and we will talk more in detail about the different software that you guys have, because most of my users are not taking advantages of those softwares, and I know it's going to be helpful for them.
Right.
So,
right.
Porque la próxima sesión la vamos a hacer el 7 de enero y vamos a hablar de los diferentes softwares o algunas interfaces que Wheatstone tiene, que sé que muchos de los usuarios, como ustedes actualmente, no los han implementado en sus instalaciones simplemente porque no se les ha demostrado de forma correcta, pero ellos tienen muchos software como el Meter, que él tiene ahorita en pantalla, o los crossovers, que les puede hacer de mucha utilidad, de manera que ese va a ser el tercer entrenamiento, que va a ser el 7 de enero igual a las 10 de la mañana. Ok. Vamos a ver también los software remotos, como el Remix, que vemos también ahorita en pantalla. And there's also one that you have the XXYY, right?
Yep, this is the, so that was remote LXE that I just showed you. Remix is another that he'll go over.
Este es el Remix para poder controlar la consola de casa. Y esto es lo que vamos a ver el 7 de enero.
I'll see, I don't know if we got PCXY here. Let me check.
Bueno, aquí en esta computadora no tenemos el PCXY, pero es uno de los contenidos que vamos a ver el 7 de enero. Bueno, yo creo que hasta ahorita queda esta plática del día de hoy. Darrin, thank you for your time. Y gracias a todos ustedes también por su tiempo. Sí, la próxima plática va a ser también el 7 de enero a las 10 de la mañana, respondiendo a la pregunta de Luis Núñez. Gracias a todos ustedes por su tiempo, por su participación. Como les dije anteriormente, esto está grabado. Si necesitan la grabación, escríbanos a Trio5. Con gusto les doy el link para dársela. Y cualquier consulta, siempre estamos aquí a la orden. Muchísimas gracias a todos y con esto ya nos despedimos.
Bien, amigos, espero que les haya gustado este entrenamiento. tenemos acceso a todos los entrenamientos vía YouTube con un acceso privado. Son 3 sesiones, la primera sobre el Software Navigator, esta segunda que trató de las consolas IP y las consolas de la serie L, y nuestra próxima sesión, que será el 7 de enero y también quedará grabada, será sobre los otros softwares que tenemos en Wheatstone para poder ayudar a los networks a tener un mejor flow de trabajo y una forma de transmisión de audio más eficiente. Muchísimas gracias por ser un usuario de Wheatstone y un cliente de Trio 5 Broadcast.